Okay, fantastic. So this is working. So welcome everyone to the first session of the JLI Meal and Faith Hub for 2024. We are continuing with our series that we started a while ago on creative and faith-sensitive meal and research methods. We're very lucky today to be hearing from one of the hub co-chairs, Mukunda Adhikari, who has affiliations with Transform 8 International and the University of Technology in Sydney. So like quite a few of us, a true pre-academic with one foot in the world of research and one foot in the world of practice. And Mukunda joined the Meal and Faith Hub last year, together with Michelle and our colleague Konul. And yeah, we have been organizing the hub's activities behind the scenes. And then Mukunda came up with an idea for the topic of this this month's session, and volunteered to actually share a presentation on the topic himself. So we'll be hearing from Mukunda about bottom-up project design. Now, Mukunda is going to speak about the topic in general, but because we are the Meal and Faith Hub, so we're obviously interested in how questions of meal relate to faith, to work with or as faith actors. So this is something that I will just encourage everyone to think about as we hear from Mukunda, and that's probably something that we can also explore together in the Q&A and discussion in the second half of the presentation. So Mukunda is going to speak for around half an hour. I'm not going to give any times because we're all in different time zones and this is just going to get very confusing. So please just yeah, keep an eye on the time wherever in the world you are. And after half an hour, roughly from now, Mukunda is going to stop and we have about half an hour of discussion where we would love to hear from all of you, hear from your experiences, how what Mukunda has been speaking about resonates with you. So I'll stop there and hand over to Mukunda.
Thank you, Jennifer. Let me quickly check. Do you see PowerPoint mode or the notes mode?
PowerPoint.
Oh, good. Thank you.
Yeah.
It works then. Yes, I think we have started recording this session. Good evening from Kathmandu, Nepal, and good morning, afternoon, and evening to you all where you are now. If some of us are from South Pole of the Earth, then good night to you. It's 1 a.m. in Sydney. Although I live and work in Australia, I'm currently living in Nepal and hence facilitating this webinar from the country of Himalayas. See, in the next, let's say 30 minutes or 40 minutes or so, we will try to look at some conceptual understanding of development, its approaches, and then we connect these to project design and co-design. Out of many development approaches, narrative and principles, I will pick participation to connect to overall development approaches and practices to understand whether and how we do project design. I also will try to link other approaches or narratives such as localization and inclusion briefly to reflect how they likely will be treated and thus showing why bottom-up co-design is very much important for us. Finally, we'll be looking at a practice of an organization called Transform 8 and its partners to understand how we do bottom-up project co-design. Let me start with some development approaches. You can see in this screen. Actually, if we look at the development principles and philosophies and approaches, we need to go back to, let's say, maybe 70, 80 years ago. And in the root of colonial mindset, development was all about North helping the South to raise their living standard and help build infrastructure. In the process, many terms were developed, including the third world country, developing countries, and many more. The development was purely led by developed countries and their experts, and developing countries and people were more or less passive recipients in the we call grace. So this development was one size fits all approach, and development is also interconnected with some sort of geopolitics and hegemony. But in the development sector, we never openly have a broader conversation or discussion about this. And many in the past attempted some sort of savior, particularly white savior approach, meaning saving people in developing nations from the north. And still we can see some of this mindset in some Christian organizations. So in the midst of top-down and technocratic development context, participation in development was a radical concept and radical thinking led by Robert Chambers and other, including leader of citizenship participation back in 1969. Well, has been an accelerating evolution of participatory methodologies in development practice from 1970s. It was only in the 1990s participation rose into the prominence in the agenda of development. And you can further read about this in the Robert Chambers book and his articles. And later on, back in 1992, then UNICEF, or let's say UN, recognized, right to citizenship as a fundamental participation as a fundamental rights. When participation came into the prominence, actually participation then was to be a transformative process, emancipatory idea, community-led development, process to make decisions by community for their development, which is purely a bottom-up process. Numerous studies have evidenced the benefits of participation in community development. And the discourse of participation in community back in 90s and later was so powerful, practitioners and academics have developed and produced many manuals and tools for participatory community development. On the other hand, there was some sort of, I call it existing top-down and technocratic development. And that existing top-down and technocratic development also adopted the idea of participation in development. For example, monitoring and evaluation became participatory monitoring and evaluation. People started talking about community consultation. Process like PRA and PLA was started to collect data or information for the project design, and NGOs were asked in the proposal how community people are participating in the project. However, that adoption by existing developmental agencies and organizations was so limited to some modification of approaches and processes without really shifting the mindset and intentions. For example, there was not significant shift in project design. There was limited use of idea and practice on participatory project design or co-design, which means focus was given so much on participatory M&E as a function of project cycle management, but not on participatory project assessment and design. And PRA and PLA type of tool was used as information source to design the project by development agencies, including NGOs. Some more examples could be projects were designed in NGOs or donors headquarters, and even on the ground, meaning in many developing countries, we know the community mindset in NGOs, meaning NGOs behave as a contractor on behalf of communities. Instead of asking or going to the communities and asking them to contribute, many times NGOs behave as a contractor on behalf of communities. And NGOs and consultants learned what type of languages are sellable to donors to get project, and hence many things appeared just on the paper but not on the practice. If I share a current example, I mean, my organization Transform Aid was looking for a evaluation consultant in Africa, and then they proposed a method called participatory evaluation. And then I asked them, what does it mean? How are you going to make this evaluation participatory? And the response was, he is going to use focal group discussion as a method in evaluation, and in that focal group discussion people are participating, and that is why now there is participatory evaluation. I mean, he just tried to sell this idea of participation to us or to me, where even FGD, which is focal group discussion, is not even fully a consultative process. And if we still look at the sector, log frame is and was a dominant tool for project design. So connecting development approaches and then radical idea of participation to project design, what we can say in conclusion is we can say that with the radical idea of participation of bottom-up and community-led process, the community people should be in the decision-making role, which is the real idea of bottom-up community development. However, we development agencies continued treating people and community as target groups, beneficiaries. If we go beyond that, then like collaborators, or in terms of methodology, if we hardly use consultative type of process, not really participatory process. And then our maximum level was participation and consultation. And then many times we use the idea of tokenistic in our national plan and policy in the development sector. This participation did not work as anticipated. And participation is all about letting community decide about their development and the needs. And the need was really empowerment, and which needs empowerment, meaning giving power that I have to somebody so that they become powerful to change their situations. But I mean, participation did not work in that level. So if we look at the current context now, if we look at the current context now, we have started talking about other ideas and processes like participation. Some of the terminologies that we time and again hear is localization, decolonization, inclusion, and there are a bunch of other terminologies and words that we can see, we can call the buzzwords that we can see in the development sector. It is good to start, for example, idea of localization and decolonization, but symptoms are not great the way I see it. If I pick an example, for example, there are a couple of, I think, a few indicators on localization, which is, it came from back in 2016, came from Grand Bargain. And then, there are indicators something like 25% of funding will be insured or will be given to local NGO to implement by donors or INGOs. And then I'm like, it's like 25%. It's not like 100%. So it is a good start, but it's still the direction I see is not really great. And why is that? Because we do not want to give power to local NGOs and communities, and we really want to hold power, and which is money and resources, to in donor and INGOs community. If we look at some of the examples, themes are still primarily determined by donors. Okay, what will be theme for next decade or next 5 years? Actually, donor decides that. And then if you look at some issues, they are identified by donors. Climate change, for example. I mean, if you look at 3 years, 4 years ago, climate change was there, but it was not prominent. But now climate change is there. Then who is deciding this? Is local community deciding this, or the donors are deciding this? So it's still, this is the context that we are operating. So the question for us is, in that particular context, how do we co-design a project which is purely bottom-up? And how can we, as local NGOs or international NGOs, facilitate the process where we can advocate and influence for bottom-up process. Let me go into the deeper of this conversation a bit. And part of that would be like I'll be sharing some of my experience in Transform 8 and how we are doing it, okay? See, being aware of these all criticisms of development approaches, many organizations in different countries have different bottom-up project co-design practices. Out of many practices, let me share one practice that we, Transform 8 International, has been doing for project co-design. And let me recognize that there are other multiple practices, and what we are doing is just one of that. So for us, when we talk about co-design, for us, co-design is all about designing with, not for people. Okay, it is that a philosophy that we carry with us. It is designed with, not for people, and it involves sharing power and prioritizing relationships using participatory means and building capability. And co-design involves coming alongside people who experience vulnerabilities to work with them in creating interventions, services, and programs which will work in the context of their lives and will reflect their own values and goals. This is something co-design for us. So for co-design, we can also call something like bottom-up co-design or community-led design or locally led design or so on. And most of the time, project design is limited to consultative level. If you look at this spectrum, then many times project design is limited to the consultative level, in which decisions are made by donors and INGOs, and stakeholders and communities are just asked or they are engaged in the consultation process. But it's still INGOs and donors or NGOs and donors make the decision. We have to move up from this label to co-design and co-creation. If you look at the spectrum, actually co-design is just the first step. Actually, we need to move to the co-production and then co-creation, where we are, and Transform 8 is also wanting to go. And when we think about co-design, we often think more about the process or the methods associated with co-design, meaning how we engage with people to reach a certain outcome. When we are wanting to practice co-design, though, it's essential to think about co-design as being a combination of the principles that guide us, the practice of how we embody these principles, and finally, the process we use to put these principles, mindsets, and behavior into action. So co-design is all about the combination of practice, process, and principles bringing together. I'm not going to really talk about some principles today. I mean, later on when we share this slide, there are some principles that I have included in the annex. Later on we can say it, but what we need to understand is it is all about process, and then principles, and then practice, and we need to bring them together in co-design. With this concept, let me go into the deeper level. So when it comes to project co-design, bottom-up project co-design, you can see the first one is in the diagram. You can see the community assessment or PRA, or you can call it community visioning. That's a process that we do it. And that's a community visioning process, and communities see the vision for the future. That's something, it's a part of the process. And then the other one, there could be some evaluations that you might have done earlier on that particular project or the related project, and then we can bring them into the conversation. And the other is there could be some other assessments. For example, NGOs do JETC assessments or vulnerability assessments and some other assessments that you can bring into the scene. And other is the then co-design workshop itself with communities and stakeholders. So these are the four key components that we try to bring together when we do the bottom-up co-design. So bottom-up project co-design is not just a workshop that we do with community to design a project. It is all about putting community in a driver's seat in what we do. Project design is all about bringing multiple processes we do and openly sharing with communities to make them able to make decisions. In the bottom-up co-design process, we share, discuss, and validate findings and information from communities and letting them to make the final decisions. And the some processes we include, as I mentioned earlier, PRA or community visioning process, and sharing earlier evaluation findings and recommendations, and sharing reports from other assessments that normally you would have done in the past, and then co-design workshop itself, which is very important in the process. So now let me go into the deeper into co-design workshop. So when you do PRA or community visioning process and other aspects we discussed earlier, then we help organize a co-design workshop with communities and stakeholders. In the workshop, community can be facilitated to have discussions on many aspects as mentioned earlier. And then you can also include other areas that you think it is important to discuss with communities so that they will be able to make the decisions on that. There are some examples here are some examples. So during deep dive into themes or areas identified during PRA, you can ask bunch of questions. So if you go to the earlier slide, there are some tips that are, let me say it. So when we do the PRA process, do not frame PRA process too much just to collect the information that we are looking for. Actually, let strengths and challenges of community come organically. Many times the mistake we do is actually depending on the funding and depending on the nature of the project, we frame the PRA and then go into the community. And that is why the information we get from community is very limited on that particular theme or area. So, I mean, during PRA or community visioning, it is suggested not to do it because let the issues come organically. And we may need to validate all information collected with communities during co-design workshops. And we need to understand that community knows the best for them, not we NGOs, okay? They are the best decision makers, and our role is facilitation, but not taking agenda with us. And then use community people, particularly youth, for PRA or PLA and data analysis and even reporting. So when you come to community design workshop itself, then there are a bunch of sessions you can design, and then you can ask some facilitative questions in the workshop. And community people are so smart. Actually, they do a bunch of things by themselves, and then they make the decisions. Let me pick an example. If you are running a workshop on bunch of themes and areas, and if you want to ask question, so you can ask something around what are key issues to address under themes under these themes or issues. Are there any additional issues under the theme we need to consider which were not identified during community visioning? And what are some potential ways, including interventions, approach to address these issues? What are assets already available in community to address these issues that you have identified? What does success look like for communities? So community can come up with, what is success for them? They will come by themselves. If you are designing a new phase of the project, we could ask some questions around key progress changes in the phase one. So what are the successes in the phase one? What did you achieve in the phase one? So key learning from the phase one and key focus for phase two. Then what are the now areas that you're gonna focus in phase two? Then what does success look like in phase two? These are some questions you can ask. So if there is a session on JC or inclusion, then you might ask something around who are the most marginalized and vulnerable people in communities? And why these people are most vulnerable in your communities? What are the reasons? And how can they be included in the development process? Actually, they come up with fantastic solutions, answers for these questions. And based on themes or issues, see, now you ran the workshop, and then there are a bunch of areas or issues or strengths or challenges you discuss with the communities. Community people came with bunch of ideas. And then what we can do is based on themes or issues, then we can categorize information as relevant. For example, if livelihood area is a key area as an issue, then bring all information. For example, issues, challenges, strengths, future focus, success looks like, interventions under that particular theme, or let's say livelihood together. And then you can do rest of the processes, which I'll come next. So when you run this community design, co-design workshop, try to avoid your PowerPoint. This fancy presentation, try to avoid this. We need to use local materials where possible, okay? And consider power when you make the groups within that workshops. That is very much important. And try to note exactly what community is saying. Do not use your brain. Let's not use our brain, because when we try to interpret, then again there will be some sort of own biasness there. So let the issues come as community people put together. And then do consider other issues. For example, sometime if our funding partner or donor is funding only one aspect in the project, actually in your process, even consider other issues, so that community people come with other issues. If we do not have capacity to address that issue, is still we can connect and we can link with other resources that is available in that area. So because poverty is so complex, and then one vertical solution doesn't work for poverty. So that is why we need to really be looking at some other issues within the community, and we need to openly tell to community people in that context that, see, this is something we cannot address, but let's try to put this together in the plan, and we try to find some local solutions, or try to find some other alternatives to address these issues. So we can be open with community people. So now we have collected bunch of information in through the design workshop, and then information you have according to themes or issues can be converted into the format or tools that we need to use. Okay, I'll finish in 5 minutes, I guess. So formats and tools that we need to use. This can be done after the workshop. So, okay, don't spend time to convert all your, what donor is needed. They need all fancy log frame or theory of change or a bunch of things. And there's some people might say that, that can be done together with community. It's our choice. But from my experience, I'm suggesting no, because it is a bit complex, which donor wants to see. And then this can be done after the workshop. So where possible, the final product can be shared with communities. When you finalize theory of change or the log frame or anything, still it is better to share with communities. But you have to have information parallelly. For example, in column of Excel sheet, you can have information from community as they mention. And all issues or strength, and then next column could be the outcome statement or the output statement, so that you will know while implementing that, okay, this outcome is connected to these are some key basic issues that community came up with. Okay, and community vision or goal then can be converted into a project impact or goal. See, there is a strong connection. Summary of issues and its strengths can be converted into outcomes, intermediate outcomes, and output that the donor need. And when we ask the question, how does success look like for you? Actually, that can be converted into indicators. And then, of course, for donors, you may need to make it smart, but actually, you can connect that to what community people have mentioned. And what works and what doesn't work can be converted into some project interventions. So bunch of the things they community came up with, then we basically convert them into the format that donor want to see. This is my last slide. So most of the time, we NGOs make log frame as a guide for design and implementation of project. And if you ask me, I suggest no. So because log frame is so donor driven, so we NGO driven, it is so complex. So that is why we need to forget that log frame thing when we really design the project with communities. And then our role is to bridge the gap between donors and community. Log frame is normally for internal purpose of NGOs, including donors. and we can take it as a guide, but we NGOs as implementer should be really smart to play the role connecting donors and communities, as I mentioned, and then you can see in the diagram. There are so many stops which are not under our control. For example, deciding development focus or themes, as I mentioned earlier. We get funding on climate change. So we have to design the project on climate change. And there are some other factors which drive them. For example, availability of funds, as I mentioned. We may need to go with the flow, but what we can do is we can still play our role here using bottom-up project co-design to bring all the real sense of participation and localization. We NGOs may need to stop thinking that we know better than communities and we are the contractor on behalf of communities. Let community decide about their own development in their own way, and which is very strong idea for Christian organizations, and then we faith organizations as well. We believe in faith. So particularly, I mean, for example, for Christians, we believe that all people are created in the image of God, and they have the huge potential, and they can decide for themselves. And then which is strongly connected to the major faith community. So we just mediate in between donors and community to ensure the project is community led. So this is the very critical role we are in, and then we can design the project in a very bottom up and community led way. Let me stop here now.
Mukunda, wow, I'm so impressed. This was less than half an hour even, 29 minutes. Thank you so much. Fantastic. And I mean, such fascinating stuff that you've shared. Thank you so much. Really, really interesting. And yeah, I'm really keen to now hear from everyone else in the room. If maybe people have questions, maybe people have comments, maybe some of you have tried this approach before, and there's things that you would like to add to the learnings that Mukunda has shared, or maybe there are things that didn't quite work so well when you tried out this approach. And all of this, of course, with the focus of our group in mind, which is work with faith actors and faith communities, or as faith actors and as members of faith communities. So that's what we're really what we're particularly interested in. Yeah, so let's just open the floor. If anyone would like to share anything, just unmute yourself and introduce yourself and share your question or your comment. We're looking forward to hearing from you.
Can I share, Jennifer?
Yeah, of course, Monica. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mukunda, for that beautiful presentation. I think it has reminded us so much of the approaches and processes that we undertake when we are doing community development interventions. Yes, to the team, my name is Monica. I work with a faith-based organization, and I am an M&E manager. And I'd expected that we would, see how my interest in the group and in this session specifically was to see how we can bring in faith-based organization into the M&E processes, because that's what I'm struggling with, sometimes the perception is like we are working for a particular deity or entity, and issues about performance, issues about quality and quantity does not matter as long as we are serving people, and as long as we are reaching out to people. So then that becomes very difficult to entrench monitoring and evaluation processes because it's not seen as, a priority area for a faith-based organization. So I would have loved to hear also maybe from the other participants who are working with faith-based organizations how they entrench quality in their program interventions and how they apply M&D processes in their program interventions. I also want to comment on the issue of log frame that Mukunda has. I beg to politely disagree a little bit with the mention that log frames are donor driven and are complex. I think when we're taking and you mentioned earlier that communities are very they're very sharp, they're very intelligent, they know what they want, and they know actions to take actually. And what I need to do as a change manager or as a change coordinator within the communities is to bring those aspects out, coordinate the gathering of information and put it together with them. We've had quite a lot of communities, actually down to earth grassroots communities who are able to develop very beautiful log frames, and they use that actually to even evaluate themselves on their performance. I think it depends on how you bring it down to the community. How do we bring it down? Is it our log frame, or is it just a way of a planning process that we undertake with them in the co-design and co-creation processes so that they own the process and they are able to use that tool even for their own assessment, So I think, for me, a log frame is one of the, easiest and straightforward tool that can be used in helping the communities plan for their own interventions. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, Monica. Thanks a lot for that. Yeah, Mukunda, so to a question and a comment for you. I've just seen that we also have a question by Bob in the two questions actually, but the first question by Bob in the chat actually kind of overlaps a little bit with Monica's questions about the role of faith and faith-based values is what Bob mentions here, right? Monica spoke about
Yeah,
work with
exactly.
work with faith communities, right? So do you have any reflections on that to share, Mukunda? Do you feel that the bottom-up co-design does that work well with faith communities, in work with or as faith communities? Or maybe someone else maybe there's someone else in the on the call who would like to share their experience. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. Please feel free to share. I mean, I can share some of my reflections as well. Monica, thank you for comments, and yes, completely agreed with you. So again, it comes to the basics of how we really use it.
Yeah.
So, 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 I mean, as a faith community, I think I briefly mentioned, I mean, the way we see it, we value people rather than some sort of, higher level tools or processes. And so many times the dilemma or the challenges for us is we valuing too much on processes and tools. And as a result, actually, we ignore people. And actually, I think this bottom-up co-design, the idea of bottom-up co-design is people first. I think we need to value people. It's and community, and it's community, it's their development. And then we NGOs are external people most of the time. There are some exceptions, but generally we are external people. So that is why we need to respect the way they really want to do the development, and then we believe that whatever God we believe, but even if we talk about Christian point of view, then in each community, there is a presence of God that we believe and we value that in a way. So that is why we are trying to really do that process with the communities. And then second step, then now we think about then how can that be connected to the tools that we may need to use for other purposes. So yes, I mean, there are some countries that we work and then their whole culture and their understanding is not really critical. And that is why sometimes when you talk about some of the, X percentage of people have reported that they increase X percentage income. So that sort of indicator is so challenging even for development worker. And then that is why, as Monica mentioned, we need to modify that in a way which is some sort of basic type of conversation or language in their community. So in that case, it works. So for example, self-help groups or other CBOs or community groups that many NGOs we work with, they make action plan. So after the meeting, they make action plan. So action plan is a part of like a log frame type of thing. So they talk about, okay, what is this? Then what our success looks like, who gonna do, So that's which is a basic form of that. Then people are able to do it. So I think what I'm suggesting here is I think we need to differentiate some sort of complex tool that we are using for writing point of view or the proposal development point of view, which is submitted to donors, and then the basic stuffs that normally we are using with community. So I think there's a bit of line is blurry, but there is a bit of line. Otherwise, I mean, it's completely agreed. So in terms of like faith and then co-design point of view, I briefly added my thoughts. So please feel free to add if you have some other reflection and thoughts.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mukunda. So I see we have 3 hands up. So maybe what we'll do is we just take the 3 comments or questions. And then after that, go back to Mukunda. So I think Luke had his hand up first. Luke, please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Mukunda, and thanks for JLI for organising this really important and helpful. So thank you. My question really is about scale. So for organisations that have evidence-based interventions, which have been co-created, or some of those, bottom up led interventions, the question about scale is who is then consulted. So it might have been designed at a kind of a bottom-up approach, but when we're looking to scale it to very vast numbers of communities, how do you ensure that there is still that retained engagement whilst also keeping the approach evidence-based without shifting it to a point that is no longer effective?
Okay, great. Thank you, Luke.
Would you mind to repeat? Sorry.
Yeah, so just a question about scale. So when organizations are looking to scale up interventions to many more communities, even if they were originally designed as a bottom-up approach, how do you maintain those principles when working in many, many more communities, over time? Who do you continue to consult at that time? How do you keep it locally owned when trying to scale?
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay,
Jennifer,
thank you,
you
Luke.
want to respond or wait?
Let's take Teresa's and Malika's questions first, or comments, just so that we don't run out of time and get to hear from everyone. Is that okay, Mukunda? And then you can just reply to us. Okay, so I think I don't remember. I think Teresa had her hand up next. Teresa, do you want to go ahead?
Yes, I can go ahead. Thank you. And thank you so much, Mukunda, for this very interesting and insightful presentation. Very thought-provoking. So I'm going to ask you for your experience, because I have a lot of prejudices in my mind that it might not work. So I would ask you maybe to share some experience. especially when I'm thinking about challenging gender power structures in a community, or in the case of Nepal, where I'm working, also caste power structures. Like, my thought is, or my big question is, going to a community in such a co-designing process means that you just take the structure in that community as it is right now, the status quo. And so I keep wondering, like, how do people who might not have reflected in another way about the power structure in their own community come up with disruptive new ideas that might like bring some sort of change in that community? Just one very particular scenario that I could think of, as I've said, I've never tried this approach. I'm very curious to do so, but like bringing participants, which might be like the strongest voices might be male, who are the selected leaders in the community. So how to really listen to the female voices when it's about a gender or a women empowerment project, for example. So I'm just curious if you have some experience regarding that. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Teresa. And I guess we can also add a faith element here, right? Mukunda, maybe something for you to consider in your response, that we all know that faith actors can they can help bring about positive change in communities, but we also do know situations where faith actors are actually part of the problem. So I guess that's also something that could be part of the question that Teresa has just asked, right? So what do we do when we work with faith communities? And we do want to take a bottom-up co-design approach, but then we're actually working with forces in the community that can actually be quite problematic. Okay, yeah, and then we have Malika.
Hi, Jennifer.
Hi,
Thank you,
Malika. How are
Mukunda.
you?
Hi. Fine, thank you. I'm coming from Kenya. I'm Malika. I'm a monitoring and evaluation person. I'm working in a faith-based organization, and I'm here to share reflections on the good presentation we've had from Mukunda on what we are able to do here as an organization, and even working with the communities when it comes to the core design and even the redesigns, or even when we are doing entry to new communities. And thank you, Mukunda, for highlighting that. I agree with you at times that we need to put the log frame aside and go to the communities with a blank mind, that we want to get bottom up. We want to design right from the communities, and this is what we are doing here at ADSC, which I've mentioned is a faith-based organization. And the distinction I would make is that even if we working for a faith-based organization, when we are designing our project, we are not specific to the faith we are serving. At the community, we redesign with all the communities, whether you're a Muslim, whether you're a Christian, whether you believe in God or you don't believe in God. As a faith-based organization, what we put forward is that we want to serve and serve people. So for us, we've had the entry meetings even before we come up with a project document. And at community levels here, we are going to reflect and see where the communities are and the support they need, and what are their interests, that when you are saying that we want to start some, say, income generating activities, we are not imposing it from the communities. We let the communities speak for themselves and let us know, say, yes, this is what we want to have, or this is what fits best in our context. What is the importance of this, or what are the benefits we've seen from designing from the community coming up, making the document from the community until we come up with a complete proposal for implementations. Some of the benefits we've seen is that it makes our implementation easy, because the community has accepted these are our issues, these are our problems, and this is how we want them solved. Not that we come to solve them as the way we thought the log frame from the office level. So at the community, we are able to get their issues, how they feel better, they can be served or solved. And with it, it makes it easy for us to strengthen ownership part of it, that the communities get to own the project as their own. The communities get to have the sustainability part of it, because we know projects have phases, and that at the end of it, we need to phase out, we need to exit from one area to another. So starting with the community, they are able to know after a period of a year or 2 or 5 years, when us as an organization exit the communities, they are able to sustain what we've already started with the fact that they're the ones who proposed or gave the ideas. And for us, it's just to probe more during the core design. How do we want us to do it better? And again, here, it also brings out the issue of the inclusion part of it, because we are also able to group them. Say, for example, if we want to talk to persons with disability, we are able to group them in one group where they can also hear out their issues well. They are able also to bring out the support that they feel best fits their context in the community. So for us, I would mention that as a reflection that Mukunda, this has also come timely for us also to share and reflect on how best it has worked for us, coming from the bottom to up. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Malika. So we have 5 minutes left. Mukunda, I don't know if you wanted to, we've heard from the 3 people, from Luke, from Teresa, and now Malika. Did you want to reply to any of the points they've made?
Thank you. Very, very interesting, and some of the topics that we potentially need PhD. Particularly when we talk about the context in Nepal, and the way gender and power structure works here, and then particularly the caste system that works in this country. So let me start with the question from Mark, right? So about the scale up, see, this is something we did. Malika briefly spoke from Kenya. Actually, I mean, she also works for one of our partner in Kenya. So actually we designed one of the project last year together with Malika and team and community. Actually, that was some sort of scale up project, and they haven't really left the community where they were working, but they moved to some new locations as well. So actually, basically, that can be done. So, and then how we did is we had a co-design workshop with new communities in 4, Malika, number could be wrong, okay? As far as I remember, I'm trying to say 4 locations. We had a co-design workshops, and then they were the completely new community. So, and then all, the way I discussed earlier, all the issues and challenges and the strengths of the community, and all were brought up together. And then later on, we summarize them and then convert it into some sort of log frame. And then even we had a workshop with the existing community that they are working with. And then we also look at, what are the progresses they made in the past, what they learn, and then how they really want to go into the future. And then, again, similar questions, what success looks like for them. And then again, and then we collected them and then again summarize them. So perhaps I think one of the challenges for us would be then, how do we convert them into some sort of project document, which is, let's say, including log frame, or if you are using result-based management, then result-based management, or even theory of change. Then actually for the existing community, we we converted that into a separate outcome. And then other issues from other communities or themes, then we converted into a other different outcomes. So it's still we can put them together, and then the way we run the design workshop and then collect the information, and then the way we ask facilitating questions could be totally different in new community and the old community. But it's still, when if you are wanting to scale up, then actually you need to be targeting to different communities separately, thinking through all the processes in the beginning, and then having a right type of facilitating questions, and then they should be able to answer those questions and then come up with some ideas for them. So that's one about the scale up. Teresa, your question is like very good and very broad. I don't know, even I should be able to answer this question. I think one of the challenges in development sector, the way I have seen, is the idea of project. So many times we say that we want to change the behavior, attitude, knowledge, and practice of people. And we know that to change attitudes, knowledge, and practice, it takes significant number of years. And then even in our own life, it takes a while to change our behavior and attitude. But many times we design the project in a way that it is like it's instant noodles, like 6 months project, 1 year project, 3 year project. And then we really want to see the big changes, like shift in attitude and practices within the 3 years time period. So actually that is some sort of paradox for me, the way I see it, being and grown up in Nepal, and then now living and working in Australian NGO, and then doing research in University of Technology, Sydney, and then, comparing the both world. And then sometimes I see this as a paradox, because we may need to design the project in a different way. So why I'm trying to say this is, we Christian organizations, or let me put faith-based organizations, have a bit of freedom compared to other many NGOs, so that we can design the project in a way that community drives it. For example, I mean, it can be phase-wise, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, to collect it, to convert it into as a project for the donors, but still we may need to inline in that one. So that's my high level idea about the way how we need to design or think about the project and bottom-up processes. And then second, my thinking would be around, design workshop itself, the power structure. Most of the time in Nepal, when we do the co-design, what we do is we try to have a separate group of women in the design workshop. And then if there are, teenage girls, then we try to have a different group so that they can have their own discussions and then bring up their issues. So there is some basic sense that we try to check. And then and the other thing is, like, the way we facilitate the processes in communities while implementation. For example, self-help groups, that could be a mix of Dalit and non-Dalit both. So we need to facilitate in a way that they bring that the issues of caste in the discussion. So, and then it takes a long time. It's a slow process. I think we need to recognize this, because we are talking about change in attitude, behavior, and practice. And then even which is again connected to the faith. So there's so many times, so many practices that we do are connected to some sort of faith. So that is why it takes a while. And then sometimes some of our partners try to use youth in the community to address that particular issues in a slow process. So there are some tricks or principles or ideas that we try to do, but I also do not have a very solid answer. But what I definitely say is, as faith organizations, we have a bit of freedom to design the project in a way that we can bring transformation in communities, if even that takes 12 years or 10 years. So I think we need to we need to understand that change doesn't happen like instant noodles. And then we faith-based organizations who have a bit of freedom, I think we need to design the project the way it is suitable in that community, purely using bottom-up processes.
Great. Thank you so much, Mukunda. I see that Sarah has also put a comment in the chat that kind of responds also to the question that Teresa asked, so that this might also be of interest to people. Other than that, we are 4 minutes behind the schedule and time. So a big thank you to Mukunda and everyone else who's made the time for our session today. We really look forward to the next session. If you have not registered to be a member of the Meal Hub, which obviously is for free, doesn't cost anything, then please do so on the JLI website. Yeah, and that's it for today. Thanks again, and we hope to see you soon.
Thank you all. A good day, good night.
Thank you, Mukunda. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Take care,
Bye.
everyone. Bye.
Thank you.